We do not have a tradition.
I think it's partly because people have never thought.
They didn't seem to want to find a black artist.
I think it goes back to the grassroots level of starting in schools.
For art exhibitions to be successful, they need the public and in particular young people to get involved. But where does the engagement start?
To me, I think it goes back to the grassroots level of starting in schools and education and people feeling that they can actually engage with the visual arts sector as the same, because New Art Exchange is actually fulfilling that role of engaging with culturally diverse audiences, including the black communities, and showcasing culturally diverse artists. I think a lot of people, they feel that they can't sort of engage with museums if they're not showing, the history, black history, for example. So it kind of is a bit of a barrier for people if they're not seeing their own histories reflected, say, in a museum, apart from if there's Black History Month, or if they're not seeing representatives of their community working in those spaces. And that is to me, it's about education and opportunity.
I wouldn't be able to say definitively yes or no, only because I don't go to a lot of art galleries, do you know what I mean? And my sort of involvement in art is, like some people's like really into art, like they've just been doing it like and I've been doing it like since I was a kid, but more for fun kind of thing, do you know what I mean? So it's a personal thing to me.
When we were going to the authorities to, let them know what we were doing and seek their support, they did the marginalising thing again. So they sort of said, yes, I think it'd be a good idea. And first of all, they said it would be good for black people. It would be good for black people, and so therefore it should be in a black area. Why not utilise one of the black centres that currently exists? So they were like not treating it seriously. I tried to explain that although it's about celebrating Caribbean culture, I wanted everybody to understand, appreciate and celebrate black culture. It wasn't a black thing for black people.
With places like the SKN Heritage Museum and the New Art Exchange, it may seem as though Nottingham celebrates its cultural diversity, but too often it is short-lived.
Welcome to Nottingham Castle. Behind me is a group of artefacts in the castle which reflect sort of multi-ethnic collections, but there's very few in museums in general. And I'd like to point out this Globe of Freedom here, created in 2007 as part of the celebrations of the abolition of the slave trade.
They don't think, and when they do, it's for a short period as part of Black History Month. That was okay because that was better than nothing, I felt, but I also felt they weren't giving the full story. It needed to be regularly throughout the year, and so I felt I needed to do something about it.
A lot of people, they feel that they can't sort of engage with museums if they're not showing, the history, black history, for example. So it kind of is a bit of a barrier for people if they're not seeing their own histories reflected, say, in a museum, apart from if there's Black History Month.
They didn't seem to want to find a black artist, they just wanted me to do the job, so I had a problem with that. I thought you should find a black artist. So there was a problem. Black history. They didn't seem to know any artists in Nottingham, they were from Nottingham, and they didn't seem to want to find one, even though they didn't pose the question. They didn't put, have you got a black artist? No, they didn't. And they wanted me to do the job, and I found that I had a bit of problem with the fact that there is black artists that could have done that job.
But even when the enthusiasm for the project is there, you still need money and support, but you're in short supply.
It's about education and opportunity, because to get a foot in the door in the visual arts, it's quite difficult, in terms of the cost of education now, if you've got people who can fund you to go to university, and also to work in the visual arts sector, a lot of people start off volunteering. and not everybody can afford to do that. There are opportunities like apprenticeships now and internships, some are paid, but it's still, you need that backing and money to get a foot in the door, and I think it's just a very competitive area to get into, and you tend to get the same people from similar background, maybe more affluent backgrounds, getting into the visual arts, so that is a kind of a bit of a barrier for a lot of people. If they're not seeing people like themselves working in those spaces, they're going to think, well, galleries aren't for me.
If you have, you know, the privilege of supportive parents, a culture of this sort of activity, being able to afford to do art and design degrees and so on and so forth. So there's the inherent structure of society, which means that, you know, again, the black community is overrepresented in unemployment, you know, poor incomes and so on and so forth, less of a tradition of university going or whatever the case might be. So it's those broader structural problems which in the end mean we get less people coming through. The talent is obviously there. So we need to think about society generally, but we can't obviously solve all society's ills, but we can focus down and we can provide public money to encourage young black artists to have the confidence to show. I mean, I think he is part of the problem. It's about, I'm not Damien Hirst or whatever the case may be, is my art any good? You're not in that supportive environment. If we can support it and encourage the confidence to say, well, just go out and create. Yeah, some of it will be great. And when we get to the point of excellence, all of a sudden your name is known, you become a role model, you can be an icon, and all of a sudden lots of young black kids maybe want to follow you.
The arts appear to be going through a transition nationally and in Nottingham. One organisation, the New Art Exchange, are dedicated to making this transition as quick as possible.
New Art Exchange is an engagement and learning programme. What's really a really strong statistic about New Art Exchange is they've engaged over 1 million people since they've been open. And also New Art Exchange engages 40% from the black ethnic minority communities, which is one of the highest figures locally in Nottingham. And our programmes include YARD, which is called it's an acronym of Youth Arts Research and Development. It's like a youth arts theatre, working with young people in the area, including from the Genogly School as well. So young people, culturally diverse young people. We do really address and work in consultation with, you know, black communities here to even create programmes, which I think is quite rare in a lot of the contemporary art galleries.
I mean, it is a brilliant example insofar as you get a graduate from Nottingham Trent who just doesn't see her story, you know, the black story within the UK, within the museums. So what do? Create my own museum. I don't have a building, doesn't matter. I don't have collections, I can get collections, and I can make a difference.
Although these steps have been taken, a lot more still needs to be done to make a difference.